you very much, everybody, for joining us this morning. We are very happy that you are here. To give a quick introduction, so I am Jenny, I'm the Managing Director here at Dragon Argent, and one of the things that we do here at Dragon Argent is have lots of interesting conversations that we hope are useful, both to our clients and to any other businesses. So with no further ado, I shall introduce Rob, who we've been working with for the last couple of months. So Rob, if you want to just introduce yourself.
Hello everybody. Can I just ask if you have any questions, technical difficulties or whatever, please use the controls at the bottom. I think we're going to do Q&A at the end, but I'm pretty thick-skinned. I ran a startup for 8 years, so you'll struggle to offend me. I've got skin like an elephant now. So please do use the controls to get the most out of the session. So I'm Rob. My most notable entrepreneurial, I guess, endeavour is I was the founding CEO of a software business called Yapster. It was founded in 2015 and it was acquired in 2022. About 5 years into the journey, so Yapster was a secure mobile messaging product for the frontline economy. So think retail, hospitality businesses. My biggest clients were Next PLC, Wagamama, Cafe Nero, Krispy Kreme and the like. So a Brewdog. So Yapster was and looked successful externally, but for a lot of the journey, it was a rough ride. I was a first-time CEO. I was a lawyer before that, and in 2020, someone introduced me to this thing called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS, that I'm going to talk to you about today. And it's just a simplified framework, leadership and management framework for how to get the most out of a small business. And I read the book. There's a book called Traction by a guy called Gino Wickman that sets out the entrepreneurial operating system. I read it and I was like, I already know most of this. Why am I not doing any of it? And implemented it pretty rigorously, and it was transformational. My business was very heavily affected by COVID, so we needed to effectively restructure the organisation to survive COVID, as many people did. And what we found is using the entrepreneurial operating system, actually our growth rate went up whilst our headcount went down, which is a weird thing to see once you've seen it. And the business was just less chaotic, more profitable, more functional, easier to run, and eventually got acquired. And once you've seen that, you can't really unsee it. And so I've been teaching the entrepreneurial operating system to other entrepreneur-led businesses, typically small businesses between 10 and 250 employees, ever since, trying to sort of pay forward that gift that someone once gave me. So that's who I am and what I do.
So we, well, you worked with us. You were a client of ours for a few years back in that business journey, and then met our founder James at some point earlier this year, so June or something, I think. And at that point, really, the kind of stars aligned. Really, we were at a point internally where we had a change of leadership. We had a predominantly new senior leadership team, and we had previously used OKRs to structure and to set priorities for the department. But because we had this new group of people, actually the timing felt right to try something different and try something new. And what really appealed to us about EOS was the simplicity involved in it. It's not complicated. You know, in busy businesses, when there's a million things that take you in different directions every single minute of the day, the tools and the principles seemed easy to grasp. They didn't seem like they would be too complicated. So can you just tell us a little bit about what the actual model is, please?
Yeah, delighted to. So the key insight underpinning EOS is that when you're running an entrepreneurial business, it feels overwhelming whether you're doing really well or struggling. Because if you're doing really well, the growth creates issues. And if you're not hitting your targets and growing as you intended, that creates issues as well, right? And so you're always triaging issues, and that's just an overwhelming thing. And trying to work out what you need to do when, by whom. And so the EOS model reduces all of that complexity of running an entrepreneurial business to 6 key components, okay? And the theory is, and I certainly live this in my business, and I've seen many, many other teams experience this now too, if you go on a journey from wherever you start to strengthening these 6 key components, which I'll talk you through in a second, what you'll find is those 150 issues that you've previously been triaging or struggling to triage, they'll tend to just dissolve because they're typically symptoms of just a handful of underlying dysfunctions. So that's the theory, and in practice, the way that works is you just take yourself through these 6 components, work out how strong you are, and then we go on a journey to strengthen them. So the 6 components are, and actually those of you that have got pens and papers in front of you, you can look up Entrepreneurial Operating System or EOS model on Google or whatever, and the visual will come up. But if you just write the name of your business in the middle of your pad, draw a circle around the name of your business, and then create effectively 6 segments around that, right? So 3 segments at the circle at the top, 3 segments at the bottom. So the top's middle segment is vision, the vision component. So where are we trying to get to, and how are we actually going to get there? The top segment on the left of the circle, we put people, right? So there's not much point in having a great vision, this inspiring vision that you can rally people around to deliver your entrepreneurial future, if you don't have the right people on the bus to get you there. And so EOS has a simplified way that we make sure we've got the right people on the bus and we keep them. Top right segment of the 6-part model is the data component. So this is all about making decisions based on facts, figures and objective information, and not the ego and feeling that drives decision making in so many entrepreneurial businesses. So now we're halfway through the model, right? We've got vision, people and data at the top of the model. The bottom half of the model, the bottom left, you've got the issues component, and this is just about a simplified methodology for getting problems and untapped opportunities out of our heads as entrepreneurs and into a place where our team can tackle and solve those issues to make them go away forever. The bottom right segment is process. So most of us that start small businesses or choose to work in small businesses can't stand bureaucracy, but we quite often over-rotate away from bureaucracy and into some degree of chaos. And so EOS has a simplified approach to doing things the right and best way every time, so that founders can be liberated from running their business every second, thinking about it 24/7. And then finally, the bottom segment in the middle, we call it the traction component. And that's just about, it's deliberately underneath vision. So you've got vision at the top, traction at the bottom of the model. And traction is all about bringing the vision down to the ground day to day and making it real in practice. So that's all about the habits that you employ week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, including some set meeting agendas for your weekly and quarterly meetings that bring all of those components together and actually make the trains run on time in delivering your vision over a period of time. And if you are part of the kind of EOS community, and I know we can seem a bit cultish and evangelical, and it's because those of us that experienced it in our businesses tended to experience like the sweet release of things going well, which is why we end up sounding slightly preachy, trying to encourage others to embrace and learn about the model. If you just strengthen those 6 components, unless your vision is totally delusional, you will just start to get what you want from your business. There just isn't that much more to it. You know, running a small business shouldn't be rocket science. It shouldn't be that hard. We just make it hard.
Yeah, that's really, it's funny when you said it, like it's a sweet release. I think the first, so we've done, the process involves a series of workshops during which you work on various parts of that model. And I think one of the things which certainly, from my point of view, has felt really good, which is why we're continuing to do lots of work together, is that it does just feel, you've got a series of tools that are simple. It does feel like it's not rocket science. I mean, we've previously rejigged our company meetings, our team meetings a million times. It saves me a huge amount of time knowing that there is this template that thousands of businesses have found to be effective and that works around the place. I can now, instead of thinking, how do I make this the best use of time, and bearing in mind that my team are lawyers and accountants and our business is based on billing our time, making sure that every way that I get our team to be involved in things, it has to be efficient, it has to be good. So knowing that we're using tools which are best in class and proven to be successful is a massive release to me. So we started using EOS so we're 20 years old, although the business has changed a million times over that period. The trigger for us was a change in leadership, senior leadership, and also I think just a general kind of realization that we had fantastic people, we had a brilliant service, but we weren't really seeing the growth that we thought we should be seeing or we wanted to see. So when is the right time for businesses to speak to you and to use this?
Well, I would suggest if you're an early stage company, you probably don't want to pay an outsider to implement for you, which is when you would read the book and just get familiar with the framework so that you can lay solid foundations to begin with to grow from. I would say if you've been running your business for any length of time, you had 20 years, I had 5 years before EOS came into my life. People on the call will have different lengths of tenure in their businesses. But if you've got people and customers, even if you've got a great business, there'll be issues in that business that are causing you to hit the ceiling to break through. And so really it's a feeling. It's like if you're feeling like you've got unrealized potential in the organization, you can't quite put your finger on why you're not realizing that potential or as quickly as you'd like to realize that potential, then that's typically a good time to do like an introductory workshop. So whether it's with me or another EOS implementer, you can either read the book and do it yourself, or if you want somebody to come in, the process will always start with a free workshop, like a 90-minute workshop with typically the owner and his or her leadership team around them. And you'll have a certified implementer teach you the fundamentals of EOS and have a conversation with the team about what it might mean to embrace this new operating model. Because you're classically humble. Your team have really embraced the tools, but that's partly because you've got an open and honest culture and willing to have difficult conversations about how you're going to use the tools to get the most out of them, which is of course why it's working for you. Not every team's going to have a culture of openness and honesty, or an owner that's willing to embrace doing something new. And so that first workshop is an opportunity to intellectually learn the principles and the tools, which are not that complicated, and emotionally get a feel for whether you want to go on a growth journey that's going to involve some level of transformation, possibly even revolution in some places. So it always just starts there. I would just say that if you're very, very small, I would still be happy to do the workshop, but you shouldn't be using your money to hire an implementer. You should be focusing on R&D and building a product or service that people are going to, clients are going to rally around.
Okay, so it is that feeling of knowing, and that's exactly what we had. We just knew that there was this potential, and we just weren't quite delivering on it. So, okay, so different sizes, different routes, but the first intro is a workshop anyway, to see whether you and the rest of the leadership team get it, and will support it and will be part of it. So in terms of, it's an operating model, it's a structure which you've talked to us about. It's the different, it's got 6 different component parts. Now obviously every single business is so different, it's got different people involved, has got different products to sell. How is it possible that one model can work across industries and across sizes of business?
So the best way to think about it is it's just a skeleton. So everything that makes you special, your unique IP, is the muscle and tissue that hangs off of that skeleton, right? So we as human beings all have some genetic characteristics in common, agreed? Mm-hmm. But we're all very different people, physically and mentally. Companies are the same. So EOS is a sort of skeletal approach to having a healthy core of the organisation. What you then do with that healthy core is entirely up to you, and what creates your competitive advantage in the market. So it's probably worth talking a bit about the process so people can really bring it together. So let's say you do the first workshop just to learn about EOS and decide if it's for you, and then if you want to self-implement or work with someone like me. Whatever you decide, if you decide that EOS could be a good fit for realising your vision for your business, the first thing you do is you book a full session day, ideally outside of your office, which you'll either self-facilitate or use someone like me. But it's about 7 hours, plus or minus an hour if you do it properly. None of these naughty visionary founders watching that just want to skip through the whole agenda in 90 minutes, right? Yeah, we're all familiar with that. So it is a full day. You have to allocate a full day where you're willing to work on, not in the business. So don't have people leaving every 10 seconds to take calls and do random client stuff. A full day, undivided attention for the leadership team. And what we do in the first day is we call it a focus day. And that's all about structure and execution first, and building the vision will come second, actually. It's tempting to do the vision first, but if you don't get the structure and a culture of discipline and accountability right, the vision's not going to mean anything. So on that focus day, what we do is the first thing we do is we talk about what it means to hit the ceiling and agree the philosophical underpinnings of how we're going to work as a leadership team in a brave new world. That's brief, but it's important. The next and probably the biggest part of the day is we do something called an accountability chart. That fits in the people component of the 6 that I described earlier. And there we take a structure first, people second approach, where I try and encourage you to, I mean, you'll remember when we did this, to like let your imagination run free, which lawyers and accountants don't always find that easy. And we say, if you were starting the business again in 3 months' time with the same rough scale and resources you have now, or if I was starting it and you weren't even going to work there, what structure would you recommend I employ to recreate the, let's say, Dragon Argent model? And the team will actually then just say, well, if we were starting again, probably we would have, you know, these 3 seats at leadership team level around the MD, who would then be responsible for delivering the vision. And we say, okay, well, what are the roles? What are the things that those 3 seats would be responsible for to help the integrator, we call them the integrator, the MD, deliver the vision? And only then after that will we then say, well, of the people we've got, who might fit in one of those new seats that we've just imagined, and upon what basis would we kind of grade their capability and fit? We don't do anything with it on that day, but it just starts, and it would be interesting to hear your perspective. People just start then thinking about the transformation that might be necessary to go from where we are structurally to where we want to be structurally. The second part of the day then is just about putting in some good habits that we can start using the week after the focus day. So we agree the agenda for a weekly meeting you've alluded to.
Yeah.
We set some 90-day priorities. EOS runs on a 90-day world. So on that first day, we say, okay, in the next 90 days, come hell or high water, these are the most critical priorities for the company, and we're going to get them done. No more dreaming about our strategic initiatives. From today, we actually do the most important things and fit the day job around it. And then we create a 1-page simple scorecard, that's the data component, for the leadership team to refer to every week in their weekly meetings to check that they're still on track. And then basically the team just go back into the business for another 30 days or so before we come back for a second session where we then start building out the vision. But I'm sure we'll come back to that. People have heard enough of my voice. How did you feel about that focus day experience and doing traction and structure first before rushing on to vision?
It made complete sense when you explained it the way you just did, because actually I think when you unless you have to have the right bums in the right seats to be part of that conversation, to come up with what the vision is. So I think that first focus day for us, we had a new, most of the people around the senior leadership team were very new into either their role or to the business. So for us, a lot of it was actually about getting to know each other a bit and getting to know what each other's strengths were and each other's interests were. So there was definitely elements that were quite awkward and quite hard in the first session. When you're looking at this, you're dreaming of, you're doing that forward-looking thing of how should this business be structured. But I think fundamentally it gave us 2 things from that particular element that were really useful. One, it gave some of the existing team exciting views of where their careers could go. We historically have been quite kind of top heavy, but actually what this process showed us was actually there are other roles that we will need in the future, and that really motivated and excited a couple of the teams, so that was really useful. And the other thing was just the clarity of the accountabilities. So knowing that, knowing in each different seat who was going to be responsible for which different thing, that was helpful. We'd done that a bit before, but not as kind of overtly together as a team. And actually the third thing, I said there was only 2, there was 3, always 3, was it did show us that we had a couple of quite important gaps. And that then meant that in the 90-day period afterwards, one of the priorities that we decided we absolutely had to do was fill those gaps. So yeah, the session was a bit difficult, it was a bit awkward, but we all left just thinking we got more out of that than any of us expected. So it was a hard start, but a really good and productive way to start it for sure.
And for people listening, like we encourage being open and honest in EOS. When you say it was a bit awkward, I mean not like naming any names, but like exactly what made it feel slightly awkward, like having that conversation about fit for a seat.
Yeah, I think so. I think because one of the things that we do is you set out the dream structure, and then you go around the table and you all put did we all put names in the seats?
So we got it up on the board, exactly,
yeah.
And then so in EOS we have this concept of right people, right seat, right? So right people is how well people fit with your values, and that's part of the vision, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you're right seat is Do people get, want, and have the capacity to do the job that they're in?
Yeah.
Get it is like, does a type of work come naturally to them? Because it's very difficult to be world class at something that doesn't come naturally. Because you put effort plus natural talent, you're going to have a great result. If you put effort and lack of natural talent, you might be average, but who wants to be average? Want it is wanting to do the role as it's been designed, and then capacity can be learning, experience, and the like. And most of the time when I do a session, a team, even if they're really close, have never talked to each other in the language of, do you seem to find this job naturally easy? Do I think you actually want to do the job that we've just designed? And where are those capacity gaps from, flying time, training, whatever? Can be emotional capacity. Sometimes if someone's dealing with like a sick parent or something, their capacity is going to be temporarily diminished. That's going to have an impact on performance of the organisation. Doesn't mean you shouldn't rally around and support someone, but as a leadership team, you need the language to explain why a previous top performer is now not performing in a given period of time in a humane and caring and supportive way. Most teams have never done that. Before EOS came into my life, I'd never had a conversation like that about whether I thought someone really got their job.
No, I think that's it. I think it felt both, it feels both open and useful, but also quite scary, because that's exactly that. We had not had that level of conversation. Individual one-to-ones, absolutely, but actually not collectively around the table. And also when we spotted that there was a couple of new roles that we really needed and that were going to be really important, it was going around and seeing who wanted to do those roles, and then everybody else collectively seeing and commenting on whether actually that would feel like a good fit. So it's very open. It's a great start to it, but it was hard.
It's hard to do that on your own. I mean, I always feel a bit embarrassed facilitating, because it's not like I'm a billionaire, it's not like I'm a genius. But I think self-facilitating that aspect is quite difficult. I mean, when me and my co-founder in Yapster, my software business, we founded the business 50-50, still one of my best friends. Incredibly difficult, particularly years in, to have an open and honest conversation about your respective skills and interests and what the business needs going forward. Having some kind of dummy with a pen asking you kind of like slightly obtuse, gentle, but actually quite hard questions, I think is where a lot of the value comes from.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think somebody had, and also, so much. I mean, every MD in any small business, any founder, any co-founder, anybody on any leadership team. So I'm sure everybody on the call here will know that in any business of our size, you start the day knowing what you want to achieve, but then different things come and you get completely distracted and other things happen. So not having the need to prepare and to put the brain power into ensuring that the time was really well spent and that we delivered and got out of it what we needed was worth its weight in gold, for sure. If we go back to the kind of so we've talked about the process.
Talk about focus day.
We've talked about the focus day. Okay, so what happens next? Can you just run people through, if that goes well, if they have the meeting, the team get on board, they think actually this does feel good, what next?
So what we then do is it's a space learning process, because you've got to stop these wild entrepreneurs just rushing through it and not actually getting to the heart of substantively what's holding the business back from its next level. So typically the first kind of 60 days, you'll meet 3 times off site to get going. We've got that focus day on day 1. About day 30, you come back for vision building 1. So that is where we quickly review the tools that you went through on the first day to iron out the kinks and the bugs. And then we start answering what we call the 8 questions. So the test for being 100% strong in the vision component that I talked about earlier is, if your leadership team was separated into different interrogation rooms, would they be able to use the same words, numbers and intent when asked these 8 questions that in an EOS company comprises the vision? So the 8 questions are, what are your core values? What's your core focus? What's your 10-year target? What's your marketing strategy? What's your 3-year picture? Your 1-year goals, your 1-year plan, 90-day rocks, and then your issues list, the stuff you're not going to get to. If you want, I can go through them briefly, one by one. Is that useful?
Yeah, good.
So vision building 1, and then there's another session, the final session, about 30 days after vision building 1. So 60 days in total. In vision building 2, we come back and we finish answering the 8 questions, by which time you've mastered the foundation tools, you're executing with discipline and accountability, you feel clearer on the structure. So then when you get into just running your business on an ordinary quarterly and annual cycle, you're all completely aligned. You can't get a cigarette paper between you, in theory, on the vision. So then those 8 questions, Core values are just what's the unique defining behavioural characteristics of somebody that is your type of person. Very difficult to deliver a vision with a team that are not culturally aligned. Core focus is all about what's the sweet spot for your organisation where you can be competitively formidable and hopefully more profitable than your rivals through mastery and focus. 10-year target's your overriding North Star for the organisation. Critically, it's a North Star for the organisation, not for the dominant shareholder. He or she may want to sell their shares well before 10 years. But if you're going to maximise value in the organisation, the new acquirer is going to buy into a story of future value. So it's really helpful for the organisation to be guided by a North Star that's independent of the owner's personal desires. So where are we trying to go on a 10-year basis? It can be 5 to 30 years, but 10's the average. Marketing strategy then is all about determining how do we get the maximum return on investment for our meagre sales and marketing investment that we can make. So the first part is we try and get really clear on our target market, like who's our ideal fit customer, and then our 3 uniques. So what are our unique defining capabilities that cause the ideal fit customer to really love working with us? And then from there, it's just about the messaging that we can use to be really clear and consistent. And again, remember, I'm talking about alignment as a leadership team. Your sales and marketing person may already know the answers to these questions, but does your finance person? Does your tech person? As a leadership team, you all have to know the answers to the 8 questions for you to be fully aligned, yeah? And so once we've answered those first 4 questions, we know who we are in our core values, what we're good at and love to do in our core focus, where we're going in our 10-year target, and how we're going to get there through the marketing strategy. So then that can bring us on to the 5th question, which is the 3-year picture. So, if we all hold hands and close our eyes, are we picturing the same future state in those 3 short years, right? Because if you and I are running a business and we close our eyes and we see subtly different futures, over time we're just going to get more and more misaligned, and it's going to make it almost impossible to make that 10-year target achievable and real. Whereas if we're fully aligned and we know exactly what the future looks like in 3 years, offices, products, headcount, margin, whatever, then we're set up really well to do really good 1-year planning. And this is where we get into the business side of traction. Your 3-year and your 10-year can be a bit aspirational, like the kind of visionary founder types can go mad dreaming. The 1-year goals are sacred. We're going to hit these numbers. And so I'm trying to encourage you to set the minimum 1-year goal that can still plausibly see you make your 3-year picture come true. Because what I don't want is the 1-year goal to be a fiction and not happen. So we have a good wrestle around that, what's enough, and we can talk about that, how you guys thought about the stretch between the 1 year and the 3-year tension. That would be really interesting, I think, for the group. And then finally, once we've got 3 to 7 goals for the year, which is sacred, we're going to get them done, we basically break them down into a series of 90-day priorities, which are a bit more like our OKRs. And we just agree, 3 to 7 company rocks, so quarterly priorities that, again, we're going to treat as sacred. And if the rocks get done, then 4 sets of rocks are just going to cause us to deliver our 1-year goal. Don't need to stress about it anymore. And then finally, sorry this is going on, but it's the most important part of the model. You've got the issues list. So the 8th question is what's on your issues list. And it's a bit weird to have a negative expression of vision on your vision document, the 2-page business plan that captures the 8 questions. The reason we do that is if you prioritise sufficiently rigorously to have really robust and meaningful 90-day rocks and 1-year goals, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff that you don't have the capacity to get done. And visionary founders find that very hard. They come in with 20 ideas a day and they want you to take it all on board as the MD. Yeah. And you just can't. And so EOS treats the issues list almost as a car park, a pressure valve for founders, restless, sort of ambitious types, to say we recognise that's an issue, but it ain't an issue for the next 90 days. And that's what gives you that calmness of then being able to go forward. So focus day is all about structure. Vision building 1 and vision building 2 is all about defining a vision that's not just the dream of where we're going, but the hard practicalities of how we're going to get there. And then just last thing to say is each session, if you do end up working with an implementer, we say is guaranteed. And what we mean by that is if you get to the end of a session and it didn't feel like it delivered value for the organisation, you don't pay for that session. I'm not going to come and do the next session afterwards, obviously, but it means that the risk is where it should sit, which is with the person that's qualified to judge if the team's going to get value from the session. So basically, you just go on that journey until such time as you understand it as well as the implementer does, and then you graduate, you don't pay for that session, and you carry on doing it yourself. So talk to us about that tension between MD and founder types and the stretch dream and the practical, not going to miss this goal traction side.
So I think that, so you've mentioned quite a lot about visionaries, And in this model, that is a definition of a type of person. So before I answer it, can you just explain, I'll throw it right back at you, just briefly, what do you mean by a visionary founder?
Okay, so in EOS, on the accountability chart, which is our kind of like org chart that we've talked about, there are a couple of fundamental beliefs, but one of the most important ones is that at the top of an entrepreneurial organisation, there are 2 seats. They may be occupied by the same person, but to do them well requires 2 very different personality types. And it's very rare that people can do both to a world-class degree, which is why we split them. Visionaries are people that are great at picturing the future, very like on the pulse of trends, love like new ideas, typically quite charismatic, can be a bit chaotic, can cause quite a lot of chaos in an organisation. But they're quite good at thriving in uncertainty, which is fantastic for the entrepreneurial journey, particularly the early stages. An integrator is the personality that integrates the key leadership functions to deliver the vision. You might think of it like COO and MD versus kind of chair CEO type. It's not really about job title, it's about temperament and responsibility. And so we just ask founder teams, entrepreneurial teams to say, like, do you have a visionary and an integrator? Are they different people in this organisation, or are they the same? And it'll depend on the temperament of the founder.
Yeah.
And so one of my favourite things to do is to tease visionaries, because I have some, I'm a reformed visionary, and so like I had lots of bright ideas in my software company that I couldn't always follow through over the long term. So that's what we mean. Visionary, integrator. Integrator actually owns the vision, but the visionary is the one that's driving. They're the heart, they're the energy of the place.
Okay, perfect. So that is, so our chairman and founder, James, is the most typical visionary. I mean, you've known him for a long time, so that's what he loved about this whole model. The first time that he talked to you about it and that he read the book, was that actually it really clearly articulated his role and his accountabilities, and it also really clearly articulated mine. So for us, it's been, as a pair, it's been incredibly helpful because it has separated, it's clearly separated our responsibilities. And there's a book, I think, Rocket Fuel,
yes,
which is linked to all of this EOS stuff, and I think written by the same person, and it's all about the dynamics between the founder and the integrator, the visionary and the integrator. So that's also been really helpful because, I mean, our temperaments are very different to each other, but what it's given us tools to do is to make sure that we're all on the same, we're focusing on the same things, and we agree that we're focusing on the same things. So every time there is a idea which comes in left field, it gives me the, literally the spreadsheet to be like, interesting idea, very potentially not today, after the 31st of January. So it gives me the structure to challenge, and it then also ensures that actually we're not kind of derailing the business or anybody else by going off in too many different tangents. So yeah, I mean, it's worked dreams for us by giving us the structure that we needed.
Can I ask another question? I think while we're talking about accountability charts and delivering the vision, of course you've got clarity around the seeds. We talked about get it, want it, have capacity.
Yeah.
I'd love your perspective now that you're into this kind of EOS world and I know too elegant to be selling Dragon Argent services, but of course part of what you do here is providing an option to fill finance and or legal and some other seats.
Yeah.
Has it changed your perspective on ascertaining what a client needs when they're having a conversation with you and they're rushing to think they need a CFO or a finance director or a controller? I mean, or is it a bit too early to say how this framework might change the conversation with a potential client?
I think it definitely gives us, because of all of our leadership team were involved, it gives them the first-hand experience to recognise when some of our clients have visionary founders. And actually that in itself is really useful. So we have recommended EOS to a few of our clients where we think it is a useful thing for them. I think it has kind of changed our perspective. I don't know if it's changed our perspective on what the services are that we're kind of offering or how that's different, but I think it definitely, because we've been going through this as a leadership team and because we are the same size as our business is the same size as most of our clients' business, it puts us through we've kind of learned, and like with anything, if you try something and you think it works, then it gives us the confidence to recommend and to show how it has helped us so that we can do that for clients. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it does, because I very often, when I'm in a session room and teams are identifying issues, often issues do trace back to people issues, which is fine. And it's not uncommon for a visionary founder or even the whole team to not really know what a good lawyer or finance person really looks like. And so it makes it difficult to determine, to recruit through that kind of GWC lens. They're better at ascertaining if someone feels like a values fit.
Yeah.
But knowing what they really need in terms of technical capability, I think, can sometimes be a struggle. So I do think there's a big opportunity for Dragon Argent there to show clients what the different flavours of professional look like, so that they can make more informed decisions about getting the right person in the seat. So I'll sell the firm because you're too big and fair to do it.
Perfect, thanks Rob. So shall we ask if anybody's got any questions? We've just been sort of rambling on for a while. We could ramble on for days, Rob and I.
I'll let you fumble around with the chat bar to see.
Let's see. No.
I had a couple that came in around common pitfalls.
Okay.
When we were set up.
Yeah.
But please, if there's any of you have any challenges or questions,
Yeah, just type it into
then
the chat.
type it into the chat and we'll address those instead.
Yeah. So where can this go wrong?
So for me, there are 3 common failure modes. One is a visionary that just doesn't have the discipline to stick with it.
Yeah.
EOS will set visionaries free, but it ain't a free lunch.
Yeah.
You know, like they have to be willing to commit and be with the leadership team to determine what they want.
Just at the start, or forever and a day?
Well, I mean, certainly at the start, and then if they don't have any desire to be in the business, we need to get them out of the leadership team and into the shareholders box.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's legitimate. What they can't do, but some are tempted to do, is to just duck in and out and meddle. And what they do is they disempower the leadership team, and then wonder why it's not working. EOS is a model to empower a leadership team so they can hold each other and the rest of the organisation accountable to delivering a vision.
Yeah.
And visionary founders sometimes can be so visionary that they actually sabotage their own plan. And that's a real shame. And part of why I do the workshop is to say to a visionary, sometimes on behalf of their long-suffering leadership team, like, we will get you out of this business so you can just enjoy your life, but you've got to support us through this first part of the journey.
Yeah.
So we're all on the same page. The second one, kind of related, but it's the mirror image of that, is where the visionary is ready to let go and we go through and they're committed to going through the process, but their number 2 is also a visionary type person.
Right, okay, so
You know?
clash of personality.
Yeah, clash, or the integrator says they're going to get things done and make the hard decisions on behalf of the visionary, and then actually just end up not making the hard decisions in exactly the same way as the visionary would not have.
Okay.
So we've got like sort of kind of EOS theatre. Yeah, because the person that's in that integrator seat, running the business, executing the vision, does in fact need to be the type of person that enters the danger. And that's a hard thing to do. Like, I don't find that a very easy job to do. I like to be liked, you know? And so that's probably the second failure mode.
Yep.
That can be solved, just having an open, honest conversation around what the right temperament is to get that seat. And hopefully the person in it will coach themselves up to find their inner steel.
Yep.
Or allow somebody else to step into that seat and they can go into a seat that's more fitting for a slightly more kind of creative type professional. And then the third one is the team just not trusting each other enough to be truly open and honest.
Okay.
Because it's hard, you know, like saying to someone, I don't think you want this anymore. You know, the way we've just structured this role, it's got these 5 components and 2 of them I've never seen you do. Sort of asked you to and you've never seemed to want to do it. Or we get to the end of a quarter and something didn't get done and we all know why that is, but people are too scared to say it, usually because they care about their colleagues, and they although they wouldn't acknowledge it as this, they don't trust their colleagues to not hold it against them for saying something in service of the greater good. It just feels easier to let it go. And like, it's okay if you start there, but it's not okay if you end there on EOS. Like, you do have to be willing to build trust as a team. And that means that when someone gives you an uncomfortable insight or feedback, you don't need to agree with it, but you do need to receive it. Because if you shut it down, they're not going to do it again. And then consequently, you're going to go through the EOS process and people are going to increasingly withdraw and you're going to go back to EOS Theatre. So those are the primary 3 failure modes.
Yeah, the feedback one's really interesting because I think that feedback and just being open is a muscle. You know, exercising, giving, I mean, you know, obviously in appraisal time you get feedback and you do 360s and all that, but actually building live feedback and live openness into everything is something which is hard to do, and it is something that you do need to practice, because otherwise, like you say, just go back to square one.
Yeah, it doesn't come naturally to me at all, but that's why I use the tools.
So I don't think we have got any. I don't think we've got any. Oh, hang on.
Justin's raised a hand.
Justin's raised a hand. What do I do?
I think we can hear you, Justin.
Oh, can we hear you, Justin?
Let's see. Can
Oh,
you hear me?
yes,
we can.
Very good. Ask away.
Excellent. You can't see me, that's obviously the settings. But I'd just like to say this has been absolutely excellent. I love the openness, the kind of honesty with which you've had that conversation together. It's been wonderful watching it. And a couple of things have occurred to me. Rob, you definitely kind of indicated earlier in it this sort of area around what I work in, which is strengths, and how if people are, you know, strong in something, they're going to do brilliantly in it. If they're not, it's really hard work to get there. And I just wondered if you had come across clients that also work with Clifton Strengths, which is my area of work, and I'm thinking there's a really good fit here, and I would like to feel like I could recommend this system to potentially some of the clients I work with. So really, as a question to you is, have you come across clients that have worked with Clifton Strengths in this EOS work that you do?
Well, we
Please.
actually, I'm just going to jump in, Justin, just very quickly. So we actually, that's really funny that you mentioned that. We historically, when everybody joins us, we give them a Clifton Strengths book. So
brilliant.
we go through that. We go through the strengths exercise, so that we understand what different individuals, you know, what different strengths people are. But currently, we really actually don't do anything with it. It's just something which is a great source of inspiration, a great source of data that just gets kind of passed on the to-do list. So it's so interesting that you mentioned this, because I actually do wonder whether now that we're in the middle of doing this, I should share with you some of the insights we've got from our team, and whether that would that change what we're doing?
Yes, so Justin, what I really like about EOS is that it's quite a humble model in that it's simple, and it's both simple intellectually and simple in breadth, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of EOS is derived from the great works of management and leadership literature, but distilled down to something where a busy or slightly attention short founder can digest and implement. And so, you know, we talked about the process component. A lot of the more kind of advanced techniques that you might deploy, and I would include what you do as an advanced technique, EOS kind of points at in its definition of core process. So it would say, as a leadership team and as a business, you should start to catalogue the way you do what you do. And so around kind of talent development, performance management, that will be your core process. And what we would typically do, Justin, is try and signpost the team to some resources or people that might be able to help them build out the relevant area. Because you might have the same with financial planning and analysis. So EOS doesn't have an opinion on how one should run your financial calendar, your management accounts and the like. It just has an opinion that you should know how you do that. And so, you know, I wasn't being false modest. I genuinely don't feel qualified to, quote, advise most of the teams I work with. Most of them are more successful than I was as an entrepreneur. That's why I love teaching the tools, because I just have mastery in this particular set of tools that they then use, and they create something more wonderful than I ever could. So it's mainly signposting, Justin. Does that make sense? But I agree, it's entirely complementary, and it just depends how deep they want to go across the full range of core processes that could turn them into one of the truly great companies in their market.
Yeah, it does make sense, and I love the fact that you talk about the relative simplicity of the model. I would say the same thing about Clifton Strengths, in that when things are simple and easy to digest, they can actually happen.
Yeah.
I remember in my much of my consulting work how you would hear people talk about things and they're so complicated, and you think, if it's that complicated, people aren't going to do it. And that's just, it's always one of the maxims I always try and hold in my mind. Keep it simple, because then people can actually do it.
Yeah, I mean, my prior career as a lawyer really held me back as I reflect on it as a leader, because it rewarded complexity.
Yeah.
And I was in a law firm that touted itself as a very commercial firm, but I just, every problem I'd ever faced, I just worked harder, read more, got more and more into it, and I just completely overwhelmed myself as a struggling leader of a business that I was responsible for everything. And it was actually the simplification of EOS actually allowed me to expunge the sort of 1,000 management books I was drowning in to just try and hit my business plan. So I think a lot of people relate to that. I think I might have a question in the text.
Oh yeah, hold on. So Keith, Rob, you mentioned that EOS works best for businesses of 10 plus people. Is it a useful foundational tool for an early stage business with 2 founders?
Yes, absolutely. And if you would like me to, we talked about the scorecard element. So my personal scorecard is I try and do 1 complimentary workshop every week. I don't expect everybody to hire me. That's cool. Whether they don't hire me because they don't want to, or because the business is too small for it to be a rational investment, as it would be for a 2-person startup, doesn't bother me. People find out about us typically through word of mouth. So what I would recommend is read the book Traction. If you would like me or one of my colleagues to give you 90 minutes to induct you to the foundations, then all you do is you take the tools, and there are templates online, and you just start to populate them. And if you're in a 2-person business, you might be a 2-person business but not like 6 months old. Some businesses stay 2 people for a long time. You'll have to make that call unless you want to give more context, Keith. But you and like let's say it's 2 co-founders have to have an open and honest conversation about what the organisation needs now and next, and whether each of you GWC the seats that you've put yourselves in. And in a 2-person business, it's likely that each of you are in 3 or 4 seats, so it's classic. Let's say you might have a visionary, you might have then like sales and marketing, often the same person, might have operations, tech and finance. So if you think about it, those are kind of 5 different jobs in a way. You can pretend it's all one job, but that's not a very healthy way of thinking about it. Each of those individual seats and the roles in them might require different types of GWC. So then what you can do as a 2-person startup is use your issues list to observe that you've got a mad visionary in the finance seat, which is usually not a recipe for huge financial rigour.
The GWC one is just reiterate, can you just explain that, because I know it's an acronym.
So get it, want it, have capacity.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just about clever enough to have survived law school and got into a decent law firm, right? But my brain does not work the way a capable lawyer's brain works. If a truly great lawyer can sit in front of a suite of documentation, then have an unstructured meeting with a client and maybe a counterparty, remember the conversation, or at least look at their notebook, and then understand how that conversation informs a complex suite of documentation. My brain does not do that. I'm like, is the liability cap at roughly the right level? Who needs to sign the last page? Yeah. It's just wrong. It's fine for a CEO with a kind of go-to-market bias. And so, so that would be an example of not getting it. It doesn't mean you're not clever enough and you don't work hard enough to be able to perform in the role. But if you want to be world class, it goes back to Justin's point of Clifton strengths. So that's get it. Want it is you've got to want the job. But you've got to want the job that is actually written in the accountability chart, not want a subtly different job where you kind of like slightly sneakily do a different job to the one that your colleagues are expecting you to do. And then capacity just means sometimes you need a certain level of experience. Like you might have a brilliant young accountant who would be a kick-ass controller. But what you need is like strategic advice on like the capitalization of the business and how it's going to inform like exit decisions and the mix of debt and equity and all this other stuff. Yeah. And he or she might be the best finance leader in the world in 3 years' time, but you need them now. And that's capacity.
So let's go back to, so Keith, that sounds like that. Yes, it sounds like very like us. Deo, we've got a question from you. Is it possible to have a demo or a sample sent? So yeah, there is a good website. It's got all sorts of videos on it. So yes, we'll send that round afterwards so that you can go and have a look. So I've looked at the EOS website a lot. There's loads of different videos. Is there a particular one that you'd recommend people watch, or is it just the first kind of intro?
The best thing to do is to read the book Traction by Gino Wickman. So Traction, Gino, G-I-N-O. That then refers to all the tools, and then you can go on the EOS Worldwide website or email me and I'll send you the templates, and you can just access editable documents. The hard bit is introspecting enough to put the right answers in the tools, not just rushing through and assuming that you and your colleagues are aligned, which is what 85% of founders do. They're like, I already know the vision. This will take me like 5 minutes. I can just scribble it down. Nobody else in their building has any idea what they might have written in those templates.
No, that has definitely been a useful exercise for us, for sure. I don't think there's any more questions. I've just got one last one for you. You mentioned that there is a community, an EOS community. Now, in small businesses, whether it's, I feel this quite often personally, it can be a bit of a lonely old gig, trying to work out what the right system is, the right model, the right hire, the right priorities, all these sorts of things. Can you just tell us a bit more about what that community is and what support that can give to people?
Yeah, so it's just other entrepreneurs that use the entrepreneurial operating system.
Yeah.
Because it's just a common skeleton upon which you lay the kind of the flesh and skin and all that. That's a gross metaphor, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It enables you to use a common language. It gives you a common vocabulary of running different types of entrepreneurial businesses. Now, I would say about 30% of companies running on EOS are using it to go from good to great. And then I would say the remainder are in some area of struggle, right? I was a struggling entrepreneur running a loss-making tech company that I didn't quite know how to grow into its potential. And so for a lot of people, they come to EOS having been slightly humbled by their attempts to configure their business just however came to them intuitively. Yeah. And so EOS can feel like a bit of a cult. I referred to it earlier because that community, you've got like the zeal of the convert, right? Like it's people that have experienced entrepreneurial struggle and then found success afterwards, having made this particular structural change, can be a bit preachy or excitable.
I do call you our EOS guru.
I know. So that's what the community is, because it's people that genuinely want to give other entrepreneurs the gift of peace. That's not for everyone. Like some of you that are more technical and more somber and logical, you might prefer the book. You might find the community a bit like jazz hands, because I'm quite excitable. But the extrovert amongst you will probably really enjoy the community.
But good to know it is there. Should you want it. Okay, I think we will no more questions now. Thank you very much everybody for joining us, and thank you to those for asking questions. We really hope it has been a good use of your time, and we will send round Rob's contact details, a link to the book, a link to the recording of this, and if you have any questions, then the best thing is just to get in touch with Rob directly. So I think that any parting words from you, or
no, I don't have any wisdom of my own. It's all in the book. So thank you so much for having me, and any of you that would like to have a conversation about it, it would be my privilege.
Thanks all.